This is Folk and Acoustic Music. My name is Michael Stock. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We're continuing our celebration of St. Patrick's Day with Esther Underhay. And Esther, welcome to WLRN.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you, Michael.
Thank you. And I guess I'll ask, are you Irish?
I am not.
Okay.
I am Scottish. Okay. And of course, there are many Scotch-Irish that came over generations ago. But there's so much similarity between the music, the instruments that are played. And so also I moved to Newfoundland, which is in Canada. As a teenager, my family moved there, and then we lived in Newfoundland for a number of years and in Atlantic Canada. And I tell you, the Irish scene is alive and well there, for sure.
And the harp has been pretty good to you because apparently you've traveled the world with the harp.
It has opened up a lot of doors. I've had the privilege of playing for 3 presidents. But while I was still in Atlantic Canada, the G7 summit came to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And so it was interesting because, of course, Hillary Clinton was kind of the celebrity at the time. And, people were just so excited about her. And as I was getting ready for the G7 summit, this woman comes in and speaks to me. And she said, "Oh, this will be perfect for the reception for the world leaders' wives." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And she put her hand out and she said, "I'm Madame Chrétien." I said, "Oh, thank you very much, the Prime Minister's wife." We all knew about Hillary, of course, but she was not a public figure in the same way. So it was interesting when CBC Radio interviewed me the next morning, 6:30 in the morning, and here I'm talking about it, I mentioned Hillary, and they said, "Oh, you're on a first-name basis with her." "Oh, excuse me." But when I played there for, of course, the G7 plus Boris Yeltsin was there as well, I decided I wasn't going to play show tunes. I wanted something that represented every country. And so I chose folk songs from each of the countries, the United States, Canada, Italy, Great Britain, etc., France, Germany, Japan. And it was interesting how the leaders' wives would come up to me and just say, "Thank you very much." Of course, they recognize their songs.
Oh, how sweet.
And this is an authentic Irish harp. When we went to Ireland a few years ago, and as I was thinking about it, I had studied, of course, researched about the harp of Ireland, and I said to my husband, I have to buy a clarsach. So I commissioned a harper in Galway to make this harp specifically for me, to replicate the Brian Boru harp, which is at Trinity College in the library there with the Book of Kells. And so that's what I wanted. This is, of course, not as elaborate as they would have been. They would have the Celtic knots carved into it. It would be beautifully decorated on the soundboard, but it's such a beautiful harp, and this is my true souvenir, I guess, from Ireland. It's much different from the other 2 harps. The other 2 harps are played with the flesh of the fingers, whereas the clarsach has wire strings and you play with the nail, which is a challenge for a harpist to go back and forth. A harpist, actually, is the harpist that plays on the pedal harp. The one that plays the non-pedal harp we call a harper. And it's interesting because these days, mostly what you see as harpers or harpists are women. But back traditionally in Ireland, it was the male harper that went around and played.
So I assume the smaller harp is the oldest harp.
It is. It is.
And they preceded the piano. It would make sense.
By thousands of years. Actually, we have pictures coming from Egypt, from Mesopotamia, some of the first harps that were created. Of course, we read about it in the scripture of David playing the harp. It didn't look like any of these harps.
That's right.
But it goes back thousands of years. And even the most ancient of harps that we have, Irish harp, is the Brian Boru. They call it the Brian Boru. It wasn't his harp. He's from much earlier. But the Brian Boru harp is actually from the 14th century, which is still pretty old.
So if you were a troubadour in Ireland, you'd be traveling around with one of these harps.
Absolutely. Quite often they would go around with it on their back. It was really played in the courts. Actually, Brian Boru was a chieftain, and he played the harp. But they would have a patron, which would send them. Quite often, they were blind, and so this gave them something to do. But it became quite political because they would make up their songs, their poems, and put it to music. And in fact, at one point in time, it was issued that all of the harps be burned, because it was really quite they became quite political with their soapbox.
Well, that's I guess that's a tradition with a lot of folk instruments and a lot of trying to wipe out a culture. They get rid of their instruments.
Exactly.
So do you play with your fingers and fingernails?
I do. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, actually. In another story that happened, of course, we got it in Galway and then went to Dublin. And of course, any musician has to take in Temple Bar. I mean, you have to go pub hopping to see the musicians. So I was so excited to go. I wanted to see, of course, the fiddlers, the step dancing there, of course, the squeeze box, but I was hoping to see a harper as well. Well, we saw all the others, but we didn't see a harper. But we were walking down the street, Temple Bar. I had my harp, and so I had only had it for 2 days. She had just finished making it. I had already tuned it about 25 times, lost about 5 strings already. And
because of too tight and too tight?
Yeah, because the strings have to stretch. You know, you have to do it very slowly, and they stretch, and they're wires, so they don't stretch as easily as the catgut that we have or the nylon that we have. So I was walking down, a football match had taken place. They were all celebrating the streets in their kilts, and I didn't realize I was actually going to create basically one of those flash mob scenes. And you've seen them of one person starts playing an instrument or singing, and then someone else comes along, and then another. And it really became like that because these guys came along and they said, "Oh, can you play it?" And I said, "Well, yes." I kind of hesitated because it was new strings.
Yeah.
And they say a harpist spends half of her time tuning the harp and half time playing out of tune. Okay, so I was there starting to apologize, and I think they thought, "Oh, she doesn't know how to play." So I said, no, I know how to play, but it might not be in tune. I shouldn't have worried about it. Okay, they'd had plenty to drink at that point in time. So I started playing Danny Boy for them, and again on these brand new strings.
I want to hear the rest of this play and the story, but let me just take a quick break here. We're at the top of the hour, okay?
Absolutely.
We're talking to Esther Underhay, and her experience was with the harp here on 91.3 Folk and Acoustic Music. My name is Michael Stock, and you're with your replica ancient harp now.
Yes.
And it's it looks like a Guinness harp.
Exactly. Yeah, people around the world recognize it.
If they drink Guinness
If
beer.
yeah, exactly.
And you started this flash mob you mentioned?
I did, yes. I did not plan on that at all, but of course they asked if I could play. And of course, what does everybody want to sing? They want to sing Danny Boy. So I started in, of course, didn't have much of fingernails, which I still don't. You're not supposed to when you play the concert harp. But I would play. And of course, as I got to the chorus of it, they were just singing with all their heart. You know, you knew they had so much pride in their culture, in their traditions, and in their music. And it was just really, really cool. I was really scared that I might lose a string. But fortunately, they hung right in there for me until the very last note. And I lost the top G, which I lost today when I was tuning. And so that does happen from time to time, but it was really such an experience for them, I'm sure, but very much so for me to be a part of that.
So. And It was pretty scary being that you play that harp differently than you play the concert harp.
Absolutely. I'd never played one before. And there was one particular guy, I was really holding on to it quite closely because I think he would have stolen it away from me if he had half a chance to do that. But it was really very special.
Well, those are scary. I happened to be during my one trip to Europe after a football game, and the local team won, and it was a scary situation because there were thousands of people. I thought it was a riot.
Oh, yes.
So it was safe. You felt safe. You were.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
And this was in Ireland, obviously.
It was. It was.
Okay. You travel with that harp
Oh my, yes.
all over the world.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yes.
I thought guitars were paying to travel with.
Actually, and I played on celebrity cruises, but my daughter did much longer than I did. And
She plays the harp as
She
well.
plays the harp. She's a marvelous harpist. And so she took my gold harp to on board ship before Celebrity bought their own harps. And there was one time she was finished her contract. She was in Barcelona. The harp was on the pier. The ship was leaving. And she said, no, I'm not going anywhere until someone takes responsibility of my harp. And so the captain was on board, and he was saying, get Annalisa on the ship so we can leave. Get her on the ship. She said, I'm not going anywhere till someone takes care of my harp. And someone did finally come and take responsibility of it so that it didn't disappear into
And
wherever.
she held up the whole ship.
She did.
Well, that's one of the exciting escapades I'm sure you have
Yes.
of playing that harp. Do you want to show us what it sounds like? Is
Absolutely.
different? Now this one you play with your fingers rather than your nails.
Definitely.
Esther Underhay here live in the WLRN studio playing her classic harp. That's also a much more detailed version of Danny Boy.
Definitely.
Do you do reels and jigs also on there?
Well, usually the reels and jigs are done on the fiddle and the squeeze box. I really more specialize on the ballads, that beautiful tone, beautiful melodies that they have. Usually people don't get up and dance a jig while I'm playing, but
That's right. Harps, I guess, accompany people while they're singing.
Yes,
so that makes
of course.
sense. It says also you created a second flash mob at
well, a little bit different. Actually, we were still in Dublin, and of course, any harpist is going to want to go see the Brian Boru harp at Trinity College in
Well,
the...
tell me, I don't know about the Brian Boru harp.
Okay, it is the oldest existing Irish harp, and it is at the Trinity College in the library, at the same room where the Book of Kells is, in a case, in a glass case, alarmed, I'm sure. And, I just wanted to see it. There's only one other harp that's about the same age, and that's called the Queen Mary, which is actually in Scotland.
Well, how old is old?
It goes back to the 14th century.
Wow, okay. And you obviously didn't get to play it. Nobody plays it anymore.
No. What I didn't realize I was going to do, I had my harp in the pack on my back, took it on. I wanted to compare the two. This one is not embellished like that one, but I wanted to see if it actually looked a lot like it. I had seen pictures, of course, of the Brian Boru. And what I did not realize is I was going to give the security guard a heart attack.
No.
Okay, the library is a long, narrow room, all right? So he was at the other end where people were coming and going to make sure no one took anything out of there, I'm sure. And so, of course, I had my harp in my hands here, and he came running. I'm sure he's probably never run so fast. Probably thought he was, What happened? How did she get that out of the case? So I quickly told him, no, this is my harp. I just wanted to compare the two. And he said, okay, that's fine. Well, of course, it had created quite a stir. So many tourists in there, and they started gathering around. They said, oh, can you play it? So he said, yes, you can play it. And it became almost like a show and tell, question and answers. So it was really a very special experience. I did not expect to be performing at Trinity College.
Well,
But it was really a lot of fun.
Did you perform when you were in Ireland? Did you get to perform professionally?
I did not. We were there on vacation. I did not set out to perform professionally.
Well, what kind of performances do you do professionally?
I played in concerts in the area, in Canada I did as well, and a lot of corporate, a lot of private events. And also I do Irish presentations, especially in this month in the library system. I've done that for several years, actually.
How'd you get the gig to play for presidents?
That's an interesting one. Well, of course, living in South Florida, they do come down here from time to time. And so I had the opportunity to play for President Clinton. And it was really very special up in Palm Beach, did that. And then a few years later, I had the opportunity to play for with President George Bush Sr., and that was really very special to be a part of that. Of course, with President Trump, I had played for him quite a few times at the Red Cross Ball in Palm Beach and other events like that long before he became president. But I was able to once he was president as well.
Sometimes the harp is a background instrument.
Yes.
But do you treat it as a background instrument? Or?
I do not.
Okay.
I think that every performance is that it's a performance. I don't feel like I need to be on center stage, but I feel that the music needs to reflect what the event is about, and the music, the people that are there, so that it is personalized every time that I play, depending on whether I think they want show tunes, whether they want classical music, or even the current pop music. Play wide spectrum.
Why Irish music?
Well, as I said, with not growing up, but my exposure to the music in Newfoundland, when you think about it, first of all, in the United States, and why Irish music, why do we celebrate St. Patrick's Day? What people may not realize is there are, of the approximately 334 million people in the United States, 10% of them are Irish.
10%? That doesn't seem like a lot.
That doesn't seem like, when you think of there's only 4 million in Ireland, that's a lot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, about 34 million Irish or Irish descent in the United States. 20% in New England. In the New England states, there's 20%. Even in Tampa Bay, there's a very large percentage of them. So when you think of that, it's really part of
America.
It's part of America. What people don't realize that when the Irish came to America, when there was the potato famine in Ireland, and they came to New York City, and it was Nina, no Irish allowed. Okay, need apply. It was for jobs. So it was very difficult for them to get jobs. They got jobs that no one else really wanted. And so they really were the ones to organize the NYPD and the NYFD. So many of them were the first responders, of course, 9/11, and for many, about 50% of the police force have been Irish, which is very interesting, I think. So I think it's very important it's a part of our heritage here as Americans as well.
Was there a famous Irish harpist that is well known that brought the music over to America?
Not one specific one here. No, I could, for the concert harp. Yes, I could tell you who did that. That was, of course, Marcel Grandjeannet, and also Salcedo. Both of them came from France and really brought the music of the pedal harp. But of the Irish harp, no, there was not one specific one.
So the Irish harp is, when you say Irish harp, it's more of a folk music harp
It is.
rather than a classical music harp.
Absolutely, yes.
And do you specialize in both classical and folk music?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, you mentioned you play folk music from all over the world,
Yes.
but obviously we're here today to hear Irish
Yes.
folk music. That's such a familiar tune. I didn't know it was the Minstrel Boy.
Yes.
Danny Boy seems to be the most popular song of Irish. Do you ever come across audiences that are tired of hearing Danny
I
Boy?
don't think so.
You don't.
I really don't. You know, if I were playing it all the time, maybe I would, but it's such a beautiful melody. But it's not just the melody, it's the words of the songs too. And I think people can really relate to that as Danny went off to war. And, you know, we all have the struggles in our life where we can identify what was taking place in that song.
Are you doing any concerts for this St. Patrick's Day?
I have some corporate and private events that are taking place. I have one, that would be kind of a concert as such next week. This week.
So obviously you're a busy working musician.
Very much so, especially since COVID has kind of opened things up again. Things really shut down, of course, for about 2 years. So it's fun to be out there performing again.
You say this is more difficult than playing the piano. Are you constantly practicing and learning new songs?
I'm always learning new songs, always learning new songs. For any musician, part of it is the business, so that takes a lot of time to do that. But I love learning new music and enjoy that.
And you also play with you did play in all different types of settings, the corporate gigs and also with symphonies?
I am not doing any symphony work. Of course, there isn't that much symphony work these days, but I do have a string trio with violin and cello, and then a quartet with a flutist, fantastic flutist, and I have a lot of fun doing that. But I also have a jazz band.
Jazz harp?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that seems unusual.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. Improvising is a little challenging on the harp because, again, you've got to think ahead. As I said, there are 7 pedals. It's tuned to C flat. So if you put the pedal in the middle position, gives you the natural. In the lower position, gives you the sharp. So on the piano, of course, if you want to play an accidental, you want to do a kind of blues, or you want to do a slide, it's really easy to do. On the harp, you have to be careful because if you've done an E flat, you have to make sure you get it back to the E natural again. Or if you can't, you might, in your exuberance of playing, get the wrong pedal. Well, you've made 2 mistakes, okay? If you got the G one instead of the F, you don't have the F that you need, but you've got a G that you don't want. So it's really can be a little hair-raising with jazz, but it's a lot of fun to do.
That's what jazz is, a bunch of wrong notes, isn't it?
Well, that is true.
And
Wrong notes.
And you play jazz with the concert harp.
Yes.
Because that's easier to play, or
there's no way you could do it with the folk harp, with the non-pedal harp. Yeah, you can do that.
And more songs, Cockles and Mussels.
Yes. Now, growing up, of course, in the United States, I am a Floridian, even though I moved to Canada as a teenager. This was, anyone my vintage would know that this was in the elementary school book. So not only do the Irish know this, most Americans my age or thereabouts would know this. And so it's actually of course, of Ireland, the harp is on the coin, it is on the flag, it is on the crest. Even the Samuel Beckett suspension bridge in Dublin was formed with the harp in mind for that. But there's another national treasure, and that was Molly Malone. All right. The street mongers that would go selling their wares. And so she kind of immemorialized that. So I'd like to play Molly Malone for you.
Okay.
In Dublin's fair city, where girls are so pretty, I first laid my eyes on sweet Molly Malone, as she wheeled her wheelbarrow through streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. She was a fishmonger, and it was no wonder, for so were her mother and father before. And they wheeled their wheelbarrow through streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. Well, she died of a fever, and no one could save her, and that was the end of sweet Molly Malone. But her ghost wheels her barrow through streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh.
Esther Underhay is in the studio. I've heard that song, but I never really listened to it before. And it has a lot of history to it.
It really does, yes. And I don't normally sing when I play, but that song kind of is a little conducive to do that way.
And you must have known that song for a long time.
A long time.
Played that in elementary school. So you're from Florida.
Yes.
And you still live here, and you have a trio, and you play with your daughter as well.
Yes, we do dual harp and have so much fun doing that. We play off each other. We would take a song, and we can almost imagine who should take the lead, and the other one improvises on it as we do it. It's so much fun to do that.
That sounds great.
With Annalisa.
A couple more songs. The Lost Rose of Summer, is that a familiar tune as well?
Yes. Most people, I think, if they're familiar with Irish songs at all, would be very familiar with The Last Rose of Summer. So the last two songs, actually, I will play on the concert harp, and the one after that will be The Parting Glass. That has become,
it's a toast, right?
Yes, quite often is played when, of course, I talked about the first responders, quite often for their funeral, if they've died in action, that would be played at their funeral. So it's a really beautiful song, but it's saying, basically, love and joy to you. And then we'll end also with the Irish blessing.
Super.
So,
okay.
Right.
Yes. Going back to the when you going back to the concert harp. Okay,
Yes.
here we go.
As I play the parting glass.
May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun warm upon your face, and the rains fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand.
Esther and Paul Underhay live in the WLRN studio. What a great way to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I so appreciate you both coming by here today. Thank you.